Hey y'all, it's Bree Specific from What's the Word. Make sure you tune in every Wednesday, 1 to 3 p.m. here on YouTube and all other platforms as well. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell, all of that. Thanks for watching. Hey,
what's up? What's the word? No, but so 48 Hours is the CBS News TV show that's been running for 30 years that does crime and true crime stories, right? It's all on television, but for the first time, they brought it to podcast. And what we found out was there was this story. I got to shout out this producer, a young black woman by the name of Morgan Canty, who's an associate producer at CBS News. She came up with this idea after talking to me, and I could talk about it. It took 3 years for this idea to come to fruition. But to make a long story short, she said, I've been researching the movie Candyman. It's based in Chicago. We know you're from Chicago. And a lot of people didn't know that there were elements of that movie that were spurred by an actual true story. So what actually happened was a black woman in Abbott Homes actually was murdered by people who climbed in through her bathroom mirror. And they used that element to bolster the story that became the Candyman movie. And so what the podcast is a retelling of the story of how Ruthie Mae McCoy was killed back in 1987. And it takes us down wild turns. We talk about the history of public housing, which is where Dilla comes in and schools us on what was going on at the time. We talk about infrastructure, how there were people like Charles Schwab Bell who made sure that buildings that were inhabited by predominantly African-American people didn't get the care and the repairs that they needed. And all of that culminated in this medicine cabinet murder that went on to be featured in this film. And as we talked about, like, our stories being taken from us and not receiving anything from it, Ruthie Mae McCoy's family barely got any money from the wrongful death lawsuit. They weren't mentioned in the film. It wasn't like a dedicated to a memory of, yet her name became used in the film as Ruthie Jean when her real name was Ruthie Mae. So we talk about that whole thing in a 6-part series that went on to become one of the top podcasts on Apple and Amazon and Spotify.
Damn, so it just reminded me of that story you was talking to me about. Was that you or my little sister was talking to me about the LOL girls and OMG girls? Like they
took the name and made like dolls and
with
stuff.
the Bratz doll thing, yep.
Yeah, I think they got like 70 million. They won in that lawsuit.
So they took this whole lady's death, took her name, and made millions off of it, and really didn't compensate them at all.
And put her name. And I actually interviewed a director and asked him that question, point blank, period. And I'm like, what is the line where there's even a scene, right? When you watch Candyman, the 1992 Candyman, when you first watch it, there's a scene where the main character is in the library looking up a newspaper, and the headline says, "What killed Ruthie Jean? Life in the Projects?" ? The real story, written by a journalist named Steve Bogira in the Chicago Reader, the title was, "What Killed Ruthie Mae McCoy? Life in the Projects or a Bullet in the Chest?" So they took the actual headline, they named the character Ruthie, they had the bathroom mirror murder that was a part of the film, and then they went to, Abbott Homes at Cabrini Green to scout, and they did bring on a consultant, and, they paid that woman, but they never really make mention of Ruthie Mae McCoy. And, Bernard Rose, who's the director of the film, y'all can hear the interview in the podcast. It's in episode 4. He's like, man, we get inspiration from life all the time. And I said, yeah, it's the difference between inspiration and downright replication. And,
somebody's death at that.
And then these people, the family has to sit down and watch that. You know what I'm saying? And what does that look like? And then you got a movie like, I feel like that's why I love the Candyman that came out in 2021, that Jordan Peele executive produced. Yaya was in it and Nia DaCosta directed it, where they talked about gentrification a little more and all of these other issues. And that made, that kind of added to the story that the original Candyman was missing, even though it went on to become a classic, So it's complex, but we get into all of it.
So I do want to say this. Boy, it's cold. Y'all know Dometi, do spoken word rapping and stuff, so he was cold. Y'all repeat that bar he said, you know what I'm saying? Y'all know y'all people.
I'm paying attention.
Y'all paying attention to it. That was cold. The boy is cold. That's why I love it. I did want to ask you, like, what made you do a podcast? Because I know you really big into like like video journalism and like doing like docu-series and things like that, like what made you go to podcast rap?
I got all this equipment and I wasn't using it, man. I just I got mic flags, all type of things, man. I needed to use it. Nah, but for real, I actually missed podcasts because I came from radio. You know what I'm saying? As you know, I was a program director at WindyCityUnderground.com. I was a news anchor at WVON and a news director there. Then I went on to WGN. And there's something intimate about radio to me. I don't know if y'all feel this way too, but when you listen to something only in your head, you don't feel that way about that, Cody?
He doesn't work in radio. He works like the digital part of radio.
The
So
digital
he never
part.
has to put on headphones.
Oh yeah, but I get it. I get it. You know what I'm saying? That's a story for another day. I do get it. But no, but there's something intimate to me about podcasting, and I think you can get it done quickly. With TV, if you're doing a docuseries, you know, it's far more expensive. You got to fly to different areas. This was something that I could have. They could call me and say, yo, we got an interview, and I might be on the road doing another project. I set my mic up in the hotel room, and I get it going. So I kind of miss the medium of storytelling, and I just miss the theater of the mind, the creativity that you can do. You can take the listener anywhere with limited resources in the way that you can other platforms. And then 48 Hours was expanding that podcast department for the first time in this way. And so I wanted to be a part of something with this legendary franchise that was new. But yeah, that was, and I was thirsty to get back to true crime because I was doing MTV True Life Crime several years ago. Had done red carpets and entertainment reporting, a lot of music reporting and all that, which I love, but I wanted to get back to something that was telling a story that I felt was important, that was bigger than me, that was bigger than just promoting somebody's album, that when I look back and when I'm far gone and left Paramount, I could say I did something that really felt like me, that was for my city, that was sincere, that was real storytelling. And, you know, this was the perfect one.
Because I know true crime podcasts are like top tier on the podcast genre rankings. So did you think people would be so interested in the Candyman story?
I was scared. I wasn't sure because normally when you launch something like this, you want it to peg to something that's culturally relevant right now. And this is a historical story. It was deeply educational. We didn't want to sensationalize it in the marketing, so you know, you had to be tasteful and careful, even with the cover artist. The cover art's so dope to me, but you also want to make sure that, like, yo, you know, her granddaughter Keely still alive and still is around. I want to make sure that she don't see this and hates it. And not only that, I wanted it to sound hip hop. If you listen to the podcast, I don't use the news voice. I talk to y'all exactly as I'm speaking right now. I bring on Dilla, who is not going to code switch for anybody. You know, he's going to enunciate, but Dilla is going to be himself. Kim Fox is on the podcast, and she's being her full self as a former Cabrini Green resident. And the beat selection, I literally worked with the producer who made the original scoring for the beats. I beatboxed how I wanted it to sound. And so I was nervous that the 48 Hours fans, who were a mainstream, you know, white mom suburban audience, I didn't want them to feel alienated or feel like, oh, this podcast isn't for me. I wanted to bring them into our world and say, yo, this is a universal story. Just like we can watch your stories and feel ourselves in those stories, I want y'all to look at ours and feel yourself in ours. And I was hoping that would happen, but I wasn't sure that it would, but I'm glad it did.